The mining world of Talara Prime hung under twin suns, its dusty plains stretching endlessly into the horizon. The humans who had come here were a small research team, chosen not for their strength, but for their intelligence and skill. They were supposed to study the planet's unique minerals and report their findings. But as they moved across the barren landscape, little did they know that Talara Prime was already claimed by a warrior race that saw humans as weak, fragile, and ultimately worthless. Evan Hale, the youngest engineer of the team, adjusted the straps of his backpack as he walked behind his companions. He was lean, not physically imposing, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. While others feared the isolation and harsh conditions, Evan focused on his work, carefully noting every mineral formation, every anomaly in the terrain. His curiosity made him invaluable. The first encounter happened unexpectedly. A patrol of the warrior race, tall and armored, with eyes that seemed to pierce straight through a person's soul, emerged from behind a ridge. Their leader, a woman taller than any human, moved with the precision of a predator. Her armor was decorated with symbols of countless victories, and her presence alone demanded obedience. "Stop where you are," she commanded, her voice low and resonant. The humans froze. The translator devices on their collars struggled to keep up with her language, but her tone needed no translation. "Stay calm," whispered Dr. Marlowe, the team leader, tugging at Evan's sleeve. "They won't attack without reason. Let's see what they want." He straightened, not with arrogance, but with a calm that came from understanding the importance of composure. The warrior stepped forward, her eyes locking on Evan as if sensing something different. "You," she said, pointing directly at him. "Why do you not tremble like the others?" The warrior's eyes narrowed. "Weak species, yet you do not cower, curious." She circled him, studying his posture, his expression, his hands. Every instinct she had screamed that he should be broken, yet he remained unyielding. "Stay close," Dr. Marlowe warned, stepping protectively in front of Evan. The warrior ignored him as if the human leader were invisible. "I will take him," she said abruptly, signaling to her patrol. Confusion erupted among the humans. "Take him?" Dr. Marlowe asked. "You cannot." He looked around at his team and gave a small, reassuring nod. "It's all right. Don't resist. It will only make things worse." Evan was placed in a chamber, separate from the rest of the patrol. He sat cross-legged on the cold floor, studying his surroundings. Time passed slowly. He was not tortured, not yet, but he was watched constantly. The warrior who had captured him stood by the entrance, silent, observing. Evan could feel her gaze, sharp and probing, and yet it was not filled with hatred. There was curiosity, almost disbelief. Finally, after what felt like hours, she spoke. "You are not like your kind." "I solve problems. Complaining does not help." He spent hours observing the ship's interior, learning its systems quietly. The warrior allowed it. She watched him silently, intrigued by his resilience and intellect. Other humans, captured previously by her kind, had not lasted more than a few hours before despair or panic consumed them. Evan remained steady. One morning, a patrol brought in another human, bruised and terrified. The warrior raised her hand, signaling the soldiers to stop. The new human fell to his knees, begging for mercy. Evan looked at him calmly, then at the warrior. "Fear is natural," he said softly, "but you are stronger if you control it, not by fighting, but by staying steady." No one else had ever spoken to her like this, and certainly no one had offered guidance to a fellow human under her watch. The days turned into a week. Evan began to understand her language through observation, noticing patterns in her commands, the subtle tones that signaled authority. He also learned her habits, how she walked, how she tilted her head when considering a decision, and how she reacted to the behavior of others. Then the incident happened that would change everything. A soldier, younger and more reckless than the others, decided to test her patience. "She will not survive alone with him," he sneered. "He is weak. We should execute him now." No one expected a human to ever be part of such a bond, yet the warrior's declaration was clear, unwavering. The soldier stepped back, fear flashing in his eyes. To challenge a mate declaration was to risk death. Evan remained silent, unsure how to respond. He had never been involved in anything like this, never imagined being seen as more than weak. Yet here he was, protected not because of strength, but because someone had chosen him. In the following days, Evan noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She allowed him more freedom within the ship, permitted him to walk through certain corridors unguarded, and even engaged in conversations, testing his knowledge and perspective. She seemed fascinated by his logic, his patience, and his ability to remain calm under pressure. At night, when the ship was quiet, Evan would look out at the stars through the viewport. He had seen Earth only in memories and images, but the vastness of space was humbling. Despite his captivity, he felt a strange sense of hope. If one being could see his worth, perhaps humanity was not as weak as others believed. One evening, the warrior approached him, her steps soft on the metal floor. "Why do you endure so quietly?" she asked, genuinely curious. Evan looked at her. "Because it is the only way to think clearly. Panic blinds people. Fear destroys them. I will not let it destroy me." Instead, she stood silently, watching him as if trying to comprehend a truth she had never considered. In her culture, strength was raw and visible, measured by skill in battle or ability to dominate. Here was a human who wielded an invisible strength, one that demanded respect despite the physical disparity. The first spark of change had begun. The warrior, feared across her world for her ruthlessness, felt an unfamiliar protectiveness. She began to question everything she had been taught about worth and weakness. And Evan, unaware of the storm he was quietly igniting, continued to endure, to observe, and to remind the galaxy, silently but clearly, that humans were not to be underestimated. And so the captured human and the warrior commander stood on the brink of an impossible bond, in a universe that believed humans were fragile. But strength, they would soon learn, came in many forms, and the galaxy had never faced a species that refused to break. The days after Evan's declaration as her mate passed slowly, yet they were charged with quiet tension. The warrior Karen could not understand the strange pull she felt toward the human. In her world, mates were chosen by instinct, a powerful and undeniable connection that formed through shared strength and honor. But Evan was different. He was small, fragile, and yet he had sparked something within her that she had never experienced before, a fierce need to protect him, not because he was strong, but because he was human. Karen watched him as he moved through the ship's corridors. He walked carefully, always observing, always thinking. He did not fear her or her soldiers, yet he respected them. It was a delicate balance she had never seen in any other being. Other species either cowered or rebelled. Humans, at least this human, seemed to do neither. They simply endured and adapted. One morning, she found him examining the energy conduits of the ship. He crouched over a glowing panel, his hands moving with precision as he adjusted wires and recalibrated sensors. Karen approached silently, fascinated by the ease with which he navigated unfamiliar technology. "You understand this better than your crew?" she asked, her tone curious. Evan looked up, a small smile on his face. "I study patterns. Machines, people, systems, everything has a pattern. Once you see it, it becomes easier to predict, to fix." In her culture, the ability to survive often depended on brute force and combat skill. To see someone survive through thought alone was unusual. She could not yet name the feeling that stirred within her, but it was powerful. Over the next week, Evan's presence began to change the ship. Soldiers who had once scoffed at him now approached cautiously, curious about his quiet confidence. Some began to mimic his careful methods when handling technology, realizing that brute strength often failed where patience and intelligence succeeded. Karen observed all of this with a mixture of pride and disbelief. One human was altering the behavior of her entire crew without raising a weapon. The bond between them grew silently. Karen would find excuses to pass by him, to speak, to observe. She learned that he was resourceful, not only in technical matters, but also in social ones. He treated everyone with respect, even those who had mocked him, and in return, he earned a level of cooperation that Karen's warriors rarely saw in others. It was a type of strength she had never valued before, but now she could not ignore it. Evan noticed the change in her behavior, though he did not fully understand it. He was cautious, aware of the delicate balance. He spoke carefully, choosing his words to avoid offense. "Why do you watch me so closely?" he asked one day as they walked along a corridor. Karen did not answer immediately. She studied him, her eyes narrowing as if trying to read the truth from his expression. "You are not afraid," she finally said. "You do not tremble before danger. Why?" Those who mastered it through strength alone were valued, but Evan's calm was different. It was not forced, not a mask. It was real, quiet, and unwavering. She could not explain why, but it made her respect him more than anyone she had ever encountered. The humans back on the mining world were struggling without him. Doctor. Marlowe had tried to keep the team focused, but the absence of their engineer left critical gaps in their research. Evan had been their anchor, not just technically, but emotionally. When Karen received reports of the humans' struggles, she felt an unfamiliar sting. It was as if the human's value extended beyond his body, beyond his mind. Protecting him had become personal. One evening, a group of soldiers attempted to challenge Karen's claim. They argued that a human could not be her mate, that it was unnatural, that she risked her honor by protecting him. Karen's eyes blazed with controlled fury. "He is my mate," she declared. "Harm him and you harm me. There will be consequences." Karen rarely raised her voice, and when she did, it carried the weight of death. No one dared question her again. Evan, standing quietly at her side, felt a strange warmth. He did not fully understand what had happened, but he recognized the truth. Karen was willing to risk everything for him. Days later, a new challenge emerged. Another human ship approached Talara Prime, carrying reinforcements and supplies. Karen's patrol intercepted it, intending to capture the crew and claim the ship. Evan, observing the situation, spoke up. "There is another way," he suggested. "We can disable their engines without harming anyone. They will have no choice but to comply." "You propose trickery over combat." In her culture, cunning was often dismissed as secondary to strength, but she had learned by now that humans were different. Their value lay not just in muscle or claws, but in mind and endurance. She nodded slowly. "Do it your way," she commanded. The plan succeeded. The human ship's engines were disabled with minimal risk, and the crew was taken aboard Karen's vessel unharmed. Karen watched in quiet admiration as Evan coordinated every step, communicating calmly and efficiently. Her respect deepened, and so did the subtle bond forming between them. That night, as the ship floated silently in orbit, Karen approached Evan in private. "You are unusual," she said, her voice quieter than before. "No human has ever made me question my beliefs, my instincts, my everything." In Karen's culture, a mate was a partner in battle, a being whose strength complemented hers. But with Evan, the bond was different. It was respect, trust, and a need to protect that transcended her previous understanding of power. She did not yet know the full depth of it, but she could feel the shift in her instincts, a pull she could neither ignore nor deny. As days turned into weeks, the two grew closer in understanding. Karen began allowing Evan small freedoms within the ship, letting him observe patrols, assist with repairs, and even interact with the crew. Her soldiers, initially skeptical, began to recognize the value he brought, not just in skill, but in the way he united them. Even the smallest human gestures, a kind word or careful observation, carried weight among the alien warriors. Evan, in turn, learned more about Karen. He noticed the subtle patterns in her movements, the way she measured distance in combat drills, the almost imperceptible shift in her eyes when she assessed a threat. He realized that she was not just a warrior. She was a leader bound by honor, pride, and a rigid code that few dared to question. And yet, for the first time, she allowed him to see the cracks, the moments of uncertainty that made her human in a way her species would never admit. One day, during a maintenance routine in the lower decks, Karen approached him quietly. "You're kind, you are so fragile," she said, almost to herself. "And yet you endure, you survive, you adapt. How is this possible?" "That is our strength." And in that moment, she understood why she had chosen him, why her instincts had pulled her toward this fragile yet unbreakable human. The first sign of real danger came unexpectedly. A rival faction within Karen's own race attempted to seize the ship, claiming that a human could never be her mate and that she had disgraced herself by protecting him. The rival warriors attacked without warning, expecting an easy victory. Karen stood in front of Evan, her armor gleaming under the ship's lights. "Do not touch him," she warned, her voice carrying the weight of authority and the unspoken promise of vengeance. "He is mine. Harm him and you will face me." Her skill in battle was unmatched, yet the most remarkable thing was not her strength, but the quiet confidence of the human beside her. Evan did not cower. He did not panic. He simply stood, calm and composed, as if his mere presence lent Karen strength beyond her own. In the ensuing confrontation, Karen demonstrated why she was feared. Every move was precise, every strike calculated, and yet she did not aim to kill unnecessarily. Her goal was simple: protect her mate. And through her actions, she showed the universe that strength was not always physical. It was courage, loyalty, and the will to defend those you care for, no matter the cost. When the battle ended, Evan remained unscathed, though Karen's armor bore scratches and dents from the skirmish. She looked at him, and for the first time her expression softened completely. "You are remarkable," she said quietly. "Not because of strength, but because you endure. You make me see that the universe is not as simple as I thought." Perhaps the universe is more complicated than anyone realizes. Strength takes many forms. And for Karen, he was more than that. He was her mate, her responsibility, and the reason she had begun to question everything she had ever believed about power, honor, and strength. In the quiet moments that followed, as the ship drifted through the stars, they both understood one simple truth. The bond they shared would not be broken easily. And the galaxy, unprepared and unaware, was about to learn that humans were not a species to be dismissed lightly. The calm of space was a deceptive illusion. Though Karen's ship drifted silently above Talara Prime, tension simmered in every corridor. News of her mate, Evan Hale, the human who had survived capture and earned her protection, spread quietly among her people. Whispers of disbelief and outrage followed. To Karen's species, humans were weak, insignificant, and unworthy of the sacred bond of a mate. Yet here he was, alive, unharmed, and influencing the strongest warriors of her fleet without raising a weapon. Evan remained unaware of how much he had changed the perception of humanity. His calm, logical approach to every problem, his patience, and his subtle courage were quietly dismantling centuries of prejudice. Every soldier who interacted with him began to understand that there was more to strength than muscle and ferocity. Yet, the galaxy had not yet faced the true challenge. What would happen when humans decided to act as one? The first real test came unexpectedly. A transmission arrived from the Galactic Council, the governing body that maintained order across countless worlds. They had been monitoring Karen's ship and the situation on Talara Prime. Their message was direct and uncompromising. The human must be surrendered for evaluation. The words were carefully chosen, but the meaning was clear. If they failed to comply, Karen and her crew would be branded traitors, and the full might of the council would descend on them. Karen read the message aloud, her voice cold and controlled. They demand he be handed over. They claim he is dangerous, that he must be tested. Torture under the guise of assessment. They will determine his worth according to their rules. They do not see humans as equals. They see you as fragile and expendable. This calm determination, even in the face of imminent danger, was what had drawn her to him. Humans were not supposed to endure like this. They were supposed to panic, to beg, to break, yet Evan remained unshaken. Karen called her officers to a council. "We cannot surrender him," she declared. "Anyone who touches him without my command will face death. He is my mate. Harm him and you harm me. We act where they do not anticipate, and we show that humans are not as weak as you think." The plan began with subtle moves. Karen's fleet moved in ways that appeared defensive, but Evan suggested small interventions, disabling certain weapons systems to prevent accidental escalation, broadcasting falsified telemetry to mislead scouts, and sending careful messages to sympathetic species about the humans' plight. Every step was calculated to protect him and to expose the arrogance of the council. Weeks passed. Each day brought more tension. Rival factions within Karen's people attempted to challenge her, arguing that protecting a human was disgraceful. Evan, observing quietly, suggested ways to mitigate conflict without violence, finding leverage in diplomacy, alliances, and logic. Slowly, even her skeptical officers began to see his worth. He was not a weak human. They began to see him as a partner in leadership, someone who could guide them in ways strength alone never could. Meanwhile, the humans back on Talara Prime worked tirelessly to coordinate with Karen's fleet. Though physically weaker than most alien species, they were masters of subtlety and strategy. Evan communicated with them using coded transmissions, guiding sabotage operations against the Council's logistics and supply lines. He ensured no one was harmed unnecessarily, yet each action weakened the Council's ability to enforce their demands. The Council, growing impatient, dispatched a small fleet to seize Evan. Karen's ship moved to intercept. The confrontation was inevitable. Yet when the Council's forces arrived, they were met not with raw firepower, but with calculated maneuvers that neutralized the threat. Shields were manipulated to funnel enemy projectiles harmlessly into space. Communication jamming and sensor interference prevented coordination among enemy ships. Human ingenuity, guided by Evan, outmatched the superior numbers of the Council. Karen fought alongside him, her combat skill unmatched, yet tempered by his strategies. She had always believed strength alone decided outcomes, but she now saw how a single human could direct the flow of an entire battle without firing a single shot. Each move Evan suggested was precise, calculated, and effective. Soldiers on both sides began to whisper in awe. When the battle ended, the council fleet retreated, their authority challenged not by brute force, but by the cleverness and resilience of humanity. Evan had survived capture, endured scrutiny, and guided an entire fleet to victory without ever raising a weapon in anger. Karen's eyes softened as she watched him, realizing that the galaxy would never underestimate humans again, not if he represented them. The aftermath was not peaceful. Political tensions erupted. Some species hailed Karen's actions as proof that humans were stronger than they appeared. Others spread fear, claiming humans were dangerous manipulators. Karen's people, though initially skeptical, began to accept that she had chosen wisely. Her mate, fragile though he seemed, had demonstrated a strength that was rare and profound. In the quiet moments, Evan and Karen spoke openly. "They still do not understand us," she said, her voice low. "They see humans as weak, yet you have changed their perception with patience and logic, not force." This bond was deeper than any warrior bond she had ever known. It was built on trust, respect, and recognition of the human's unique qualities, and it was growing stronger every day. But not everyone was convinced. A faction within Karen's fleet plotted against her, seeing the human as a threat to their traditions. They sent spies, attempted sabotage, and whispered rumors of rebellion. Evan, ever observant, noticed the signs before they could act. He advised Karen on preventative measures, blending diplomacy with subtle displays of power to maintain order without unnecessary conflict. One evening, Karen walked with Evan to the observation deck. The stars stretched infinitely before them, a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the fragility of life. "Your kind, you are unlike anything I have seen," she said quietly. "I do not know how to explain it to my people. You are weak yet unbroken, small yet capable of changing the course of events. How do you endure so?" Physical power is only one of them. Humanity has survived countless challenges not because of claws or weapons, but because we think, we plan, and we do not give up. And yet I did not realize how much your human strength, would teach me. Scouts reported that a council envoy was en route, demanding immediate surrender. Karen's hand rested lightly on the hilt of her weapon. "Then we act," she said simply. "Not with brute force, but with strategy, and we prove once more that humans are not to be underestimated. And together, we show that loyalty, patience, and courage can change the galaxy." He was a force the galaxy had never anticipated, and he would not break. The Council's fleet arrived, confident in their superiority, yet they were met with unexpected resistance. Karen's ship maneuvered with precision, guided by Evan's calculations. Energy fields redirected attacks. Tactical distractions scattered the enemy. And when Karen herself engaged, her actions were augmented by Evan's insights. Together, human ingenuity and alien skill created an unstoppable combination. The envoy realized too late that they had misjudged the human. Evan, calm and resolute, had transformed what was meant to be his capture into a demonstration of human potential. His resilience, intelligence, and unwavering calm had changed the perception of humans not just among Karen's people, but across the galaxy. By the time the battle ended, the envoy retreated, defeated not by raw strength, but by the combination of strategy, courage, and endurance. Whispers began to spread. Humans were not fragile. They were capable, resourceful, and resilient in ways no one had expected. And at the center of it all, Karen stood beside her mate, proud and protective, ready to face whatever challenges the universe would throw at them next. The galaxy was changing, whether anyone was ready for it or not. The Council's envoy had retreated, but their anger simmered like a storm on the horizon. Karen's fleet remained on high alert, and every officer knew that the humans aboard, especially Evan Hale, were no longer just captives or curiosities. They were symbols of something far greater, something that threatened the old order of the galaxy, the undeniable potential of humanity. Evan moved among the crew with quiet confidence. He was still physically weaker than the majority of Karen's warriors, but his calm determination and sharp intellect inspired loyalty that no physical power could match. Soldiers who had once doubted him now consulted him on tactical decisions, quietly amazed at how his suggestions often led to success without unnecessary conflict. Even Karen noticed the subtle shifts in her officers' attitudes. The human had a presence she could not explain, a force that demanded respect simply by being himself. One morning, as the ship glided through the void near Talara Prime, scouts reported a massive fleet approaching. These were not council enforcers, but mercenaries, hired by rival factions who saw the humans rise as a threat to their own ambitions. Karen convened her officers immediately. "We cannot allow them to board," she said. "Protect the human at all costs. If we use the terrain of space and the ship systems wisely, we can neutralize them without major loss of life." Karen's ship maneuvered like a predator, guided by Evan's calculations. The mercenaries, confident in their numbers and weaponry, were unaware of the traps awaiting them. Energy fields redirected projectiles, shield harmonics disrupted targeting systems, and communication jamming left the enemy confused. Every move was precise, coordinated, and designed to conserve life while maximizing effectiveness. Karen fought alongside her crew, her combat skills legendary. Yet she noticed something different this time. The human strategies amplified her abilities, making her more effective than ever. She began to realize that strength alone was not always the deciding factor in survival. Evan's intellect, combined with her combat mastery, created a synergy that the galaxy had never seen before. As the battle progressed, one of the mercenary ships attempted to board Karen's vessel. Karen intercepted them, her movements fluid and deadly. Soldiers expected her to act alone, but Evan anticipated her tactics, directing crew members to flank and trap the intruders. Together, they neutralized the threat with minimal damage and no casualties. After the engagement, Karen walked with Evan to the observation deck, the stars stretching endlessly before them. "You're kind, you are remarkable," she said softly. "You survive not because of strength, but because of intelligence, patience, and courage. You make even the strongest warriors reconsider what it means to be powerful. Humans survive because we understand each other, and because we refuse to break even when the odds are against us." It was intellectual, emotional, and strategic. It was something new, something the galaxy had never witnessed before. Meanwhile, on Talera Prime, the human research team worked tirelessly to support their allies in space. Though they lacked the physical prowess of Karen's species, they made up for it with ingenuity and careful planning. Under Evan's guidance, they devised systems to monitor enemy movements, create diversions, and sabotage hostile operations without risking lives. Every small success reinforced the message. Humans could survive, adapt, and even triumph against overwhelming odds. The Council, watching from afar, grew increasingly alarmed. Their attempts to control the situation had failed, and now humans were being seen as capable, strategic, and unbreakable. Whispered reports of Evan's leadership and the loyalty he inspired spread across multiple systems, challenging long-held prejudices and inspiring other species to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. Back aboard Karen's ship, tension rose when a distress signal arrived from a human colony under threat from a coalition of alien raiders. The Council refused to intervene, seeing the humans as insignificant. Karen turned to Evan. "They need help. If we do not act, they will be destroyed. We need strategy, timing, and the cooperation of everyone on the ship." When the raiders arrived, they were met not with reckless assault, but with precision, patience, and adaptability. The humans on the colony watched in awe as their defenders, guided by one human and an alien warrior, repelled attackers who far outnumbered them. After the battle, Karen and Evan stood amidst the ruins of a raider ship, observing the results. The humans and their allies had survived, thanks not to brute force but to strategy, unity, and resilience. Karen looked at Evan with deep admiration. "You have changed the outcome of this galaxy. Your people, they are not fragile, they are remarkable." That is the true power of humanity, not in dominance, but in cooperation, resilience, and the refusal to give up. Negotiations were tense, but Evan guided them with careful logic, patience, and clarity. Arguments that had relied on intimidation were dismantled by reason, evidence, and the demonstration of human competence. As the political struggle unfolded, Karen noticed the subtle effects of the bond with her mate. She felt more attuned to him, anticipating his thoughts and ideas before he spoke. The bond was no longer simply instinctual. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. One night, Karen approached Evan as he worked in the ship's control room. "Do you ever fear what will happen if the Council refuses to change?" she asked, her voice quiet. Evan looked up, his expression calm. "Fear is natural, but it does not dictate action. We act with intelligence, with preparation, and with courage. The Council may try to resist, but they underestimate the strength that comes from unity and determination." He was not physically the strongest, but his mind, his endurance, and his loyalty created a force that rivaled the most powerful warriors in the galaxy, and he had chosen her as his mate. The tension reached a climax when the Council sent a fleet to Talara Prime, intending to assert control and capture Evan. Karen and her crew, guided by Evan's strategies, prepared for the confrontation. Humans on the planet coordinated with the fleet, establishing defenses and creating distractions. Every move was calculated to minimize harm and maximize impact. When the Council's fleet arrived, they were met with unexpected resistance. Energy shields, tactical maneuvers, and careful coordination neutralized their attacks. Karen engaged in combat with unmatched skill, while Evan guided the strategy, ensuring that each action was precise and effective. The Council fleet, expecting an easy victory, was thrown into disarray by the combined ingenuity of humans and Karen's warriors. After the battle, the surviving Council envoys retreated, their authority challenged. The galaxy had witnessed something new. A human, fragile by appearance, had stood against overwhelming odds and inspired loyalty, courage, and strategic brilliance. Karen looked at Evan, pride and admiration in her eyes. "Your people, they are extraordinary, and so are you." Strength is not only measured by force, but by endurance, unity, and the courage to act when it matters most. They were capable, resilient, and unbreakable in ways that could not be measured by physical strength alone. As the ship drifted through space, Karen and Evan stood side by side, looking at the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and dangers, but they were ready. Humans had shown their value not through violence, but through intelligence, endurance, and the refusal to be underestimated. And together, Karen and her mate would continue to protect, guide, and inspire, not only for themselves, but for all of humanity. The universe had learned a lesson. The smallest, seemingly fragile species could change the course of events, and one human could inspire loyalty, courage, and respect in a way no other being had ever done. And Karen, standing beside her mate, knew that the journey was only beginning. The galaxy had changed. Whispers of disbelief, admiration, and cautious respect had spread across multiple systems. Humans were no longer considered weak or expendable. One human, Evan Hale, had demonstrated intelligence, patience, and courage that even the fiercest warriors could not ignore. And Karen, the legendary alien commander, had stood beside him through every trial, proving that strength was not always measured in claws or armor, but in loyalty, strategy, and endurance. But the final challenge remained. The Galactic Council, humiliated by its failed attempts to seize Evan and reassert control, sent a massive fleet toward Talara Prime. They intended to make an example to show the galaxy that no human could ever challenge the old order. Karen's fleet was ready, but even she felt a ripple of unease. The numbers were overwhelming, and the Council's determination was clear. Evan, calm as ever, walked beside her in the command chamber. "They underestimate us," he said softly. "They think strength alone will win. They do not understand humans, and they do not understand us." Using every ounce of ingenuity, they reinforced defenses, created diversionary systems, and coordinated with Karen's fleet in ways that few aliens could imagine. Every move was calculated, every step carefully planned. They were small in number, but their effectiveness was undeniable. As the Council fleet arrived, confident in their superiority, they were met with a combination of human ingenuity and alien skill that they had not anticipated. Energy shields redirected attacks, sensor systems created illusions of false positions, and precision maneuvers rendered the Council's fleet disorganized and ineffective. Karen's warriors fought fiercely, yet they followed Evan's strategies rather than relying on raw power alone. The battle was long and tense. Explosions illuminated space, yet casualties remained minimal. Evan coordinated every action, his calm voice guiding Karen and her officers through the chaos. He suggested moves that combined the strengths of humans and aliens, finding creative solutions that outsmarted the Council's fleet at every turn. At one point, a group of Council ships attempted to bypass defenses and directly board Talara Prime. Karen intercepted them, moving with fluid precision, while Evan directed human forces on the ground to secure critical positions. Their cooperation was seamless, the bond between them now evident to everyone who witnessed it. The Council soldiers began to realize that this was not merely a human or alien victory. It was a combined effort that leveraged intelligence, endurance, and strategy far beyond simple strength. After hours of tense maneuvering, the Council fleet, battered and disorganized, began to retreat. Their authority had been challenged not by overwhelming firepower, but by the subtle, relentless effectiveness of humans and their allies. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. Humanity had survived, adapted, and triumphed where brute force alone had failed. Karen and Evan stood together on the bridge of the command ship, watching the retreating fleet. "You have changed the galaxy," Karen said quietly, awe in her voice. "Your people, they are not weak. They are capable of endurance, strategy, and courage that even my people could not have imagined. But the lesson is universal. Underestimate any being at your own risk." Legal protections were established, ensuring that no human could be captured or harmed under the guise of testing or evaluation. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity was not fragile, and one human could inspire change far beyond what others considered possible. Back on Talera Prime, the human research team reunited with Evan, their relief palpable. He greeted each member calmly, offering guidance and reassurance. Though physically small and seemingly fragile, Evan had proven himself as a leader, strategist, and symbol of hope. The team looked at him with awe, realizing that his resilience and intellect had changed not only their situation, but the galaxy's perception of all humans. Karen approached him, her expression a mixture of pride and deep affection. "You have survived what no human should have been able to survive," she said softly. "And yet, you did more than survive. You have shown the galaxy that humans matter, that they are capable, and that strength is not always what it seems. Strength is measured not by size or power, but by endurance, courage, and unity. I am only one human, but together, humanity can endure anything." In turn, Evan respected her not only as a warrior and commander, but as a partner who valued intelligence, loyalty, and courage above all else. In the days following the Council's retreat, the galaxy began to shift. Other species, previously dismissive of humanity, started to acknowledge their ingenuity, resilience, and capacity for leadership. Alliances were formed, not out of fear, but out of respect. Humans became active participants in interstellar politics, trade, and defense. Their reputation transformed from fragile observers to valued contributors. Karen's people, who had once doubted her choices, now celebrated her judgment. Protecting Evan had not weakened her authority, it had strengthened it. She had demonstrated that leadership was not solely about strength, but about wisdom, courage, and the ability to recognize value where others saw none. One evening, Karen and Evan stood together on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. "The galaxy has changed," she said softly. "Because of you, because of what you have shown all of us. The galaxy is always changing, but humans endure, adapt, and inspire. We are not fragile. We are resilient, and when we work together, we can accomplish incredible things. This is only the beginning. You are my mate, and together, we are stronger than any challenge the universe can send. And we will inspire others to see that true strength lies not only in force, but in endurance, courage, and unity." Through intelligence, resilience, and unwavering courage, they had reshaped the perception of their species, and one human, protected and guided by an extraordinary alien warrior, had led the way. The galaxy had learned a profound lesson: underestimate humans at your own peril. Strength came in many forms, and the smallest, most unassuming beings could change the course of history. Evan Hale, calm, intelligent, and unbreakable, had proven this truth, and Karen, legendary warrior and mate, stood by his side, ready to face the future together. In the quiet of the observation deck, as stars glittered across the void, they understood one universal truth: humans were not fragile. They were capable, enduring, and unbreakable. And together, they had shown the galaxy that even the most unlikely species could inspire loyalty, courage, and profound change. Their journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. And for the first time in history, humans were not just participants. They were leaders, survivors, and symbols of a strength that transcended the physical, reaching into the heart, mind, and will of every being who dared to underestimate them. Karen and Evan stood side by side, gazing at the stars, united in purpose, and ready for the challenges yet to come. The galaxy had been forever changed, and humanity, once dismissed as weak, had proven its worth. Their story was only beginning, but the message was clear. Humans endure, humans adapt, and humans triumph, even against the vastness of the stars.